and welcome back to Single Sounds. I am Katie Mack, and this is the only podcast that helps its listeners find a date. But as it is the last week of the month, I am doing my How To Expert series, and this is the recording from my live show where Kitty Underhill joined me on stage to explore how to have the best sex of your life. The reason I'm releasing this now, as May, which starts tomorrow, is National Masturbation Month. So I thought it was a perfect opportunity to discuss this spicy topic. Kitty Underhill is a body and self-acceptance coach, helping people to have better relationships with themselves and their bodies. And obviously that is highly linked to sex. The audience was quite rowdy in this section because between the questions I had for Kitty, I did live polls with the audience to get their experience and opinions on all things intimacy and sex, and I will read out the results of these polls throughout the episode. This section of the live show was sponsored by Lube, and so is this podcast episode. Lube is a luxury water-based lubricant. The packaging is so beautiful and discreet, coming, pun intended, in a very sophisticated glass bottle, not to mention the high-quality feel of the product. To get 20% off for masturbation May, use SS20 and thank us later. All links and the code will be in the show notes. Kitty,
hello.
Introduce yourself.
Hello. So my name is Kitty Underhill. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a model, speaker, and a body and self-acceptance coach. So essentially, thank you. That was very nice. So essentially what that means is that my work is all about helping people to unpick and unpack all the nastiness that they've learned about themselves and bodies, not just their own, but bodies unlike their own as well, to create more self-compassionate narratives. I'm a big believer in the fact that our relationship with our bodies affects the relationship that we have with ourselves. And I think that especially shows up, not to be too much of a spoiler alert, but that especially shows up during sex.
The first question the audience got was, how long have you gone without any sexual experiences?
This is really giving Ask the Audience Who Wants to Be a Millionaire vibes, but like the sexy version.
The first option, under 3 months, got the most votes at 60%. Under 6 months and under a year both got 20%. And one person said over a year.
We have a sexually active bunch.
Active, or are they lying? All these questions are from the Instagram, by the way, the Single Sounds Instagram. So the first question for Kitty led to that question was tips around getting back in touch with your sexual energy after a bit of a hiatus.
I think it definitely starts with yourself. I think there is such a societal encouragement of us to be disconnected from ourselves and our bodies. And if you throw yourself kind of into the deep end after a hiatus and you're like, whoa, what is going on? That may not end in the most joyous situations, whereas if you come to yourself first, literally and figuratively, it's a much better way of getting back in touch with yourself, because this way you can find out what sensations feel good on your body. You can rediscover what brings you pleasure. You can even discover new things that bring you pleasure. And this way you can go into these kinds of situations with more of like a knapsack of knowledge of yourself. And you can kind of go, all right, well, I've had this hiatus. I did all this learning about myself. I now understand what I want, what I don't want, what my needs are, my boundaries, all these things are so incredibly important in sex specifically. But that way, it's more of an informed way in, and it's more of a, like self-empowered way of going in, rather than giving into like peer pressure or your friends going, oh my God, you haven't had sex in ages, you should get out there. Listen to yourself, trust yourself, and go, okay, well, like maybe I do want to do that, but then what do I want to do about it? And how do I want to prepare myself for that? It's like sex homework, like sexy sex homework.
Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, you made that sound really sexy. There is that beducated though, isn't there?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a good site.
Yeah. Also, I am so pro-wanking. Big pro-wanking. Hey, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Especially because, a lot of people, when they're feeling like not very grounded, or they're feeling anxious, or they're like totally in their head and not in their body, one of the best ways you can ground yourself is by having a wank. Thank me later.
Or just feeling happy.
Yeah, true that.
Next one for the audience. How long does it usually take you to become intimate with someone new?
The first option, 1 to 3 dates, had 80%. 4 to 6 dates had 10%. 1 month plus had 3%, and won't have sex until marriage or labels had 4%.
Love the keen being
Straight up
1 to
there.
3.
Wow.
Hell yeah.
We've got a
book.
sexual audience. I mean, it's fair. I do fall into that 1 to 3 category.
1 to 3. Oh, yeah, me
Yeah.
too. Yeah. Thing is, if we
It's
vibe,
interesting.
we vibe, innit?
Yeah. But I feel like when I was younger, I had that 5-date rule.
Yes, and I think that's something that we have learnt is the way that it should be. It comes from like, I think it's a leftover of like, wow, 56.
This always happens when I do the poll. Everyone wants to chat.
We love a poll.
They all want to chat about their answers.
Well, yeah, because we love
everyone's
interaction.
self-indulgent. But yeah, that's a whopping percentage.
That is a whopping majority. That's the word I was looking for.
I'm not going to do maths here.
No. Shout out to whoever can do that kind of maths that quickly.
80 to 90%.
That'd be amazing.
Don't know. So this poll came from the question of how to know when to be intimate with someone new that you are dating.
So this is really important, and again, it kind of builds on that self-knowledge thing. Like, once you feel a bit more informed about what you want from something, what you want out of a relationship, even if you just want to bang, like, you should still have those, those kind of ideas in the background of what you're actually looking for. And so that way you can kind of refer to, like, you can have a list. I'm a Virgo moon, for anyone who's interested. And hey, Virgo moon in the back. And I have a list on my phone of all the things that feel like green flags to me. And then I can, like, metaphorically or literally tick them off, because that way I can see the things in the other person and go, oh, well, these are all things that really align with me, myself, my values, what I'm looking for out of this kind of situation. So again, it's another more self-knowledge, another piece of homework for you. What is a green flag to you? What feels like safety to you? What feels like sexiness to you? All these things that no one else can answer but yourself. And then that way you can go in search of it. I think also what's fabulous about this is making sure that that person is really open and communicative with you as well. Because if you want to have these kind of more open conversations, especially if you want to, like, dabble in kink, for example, you want to make sure that you're doing that with someone who is on the same page as you, who will be able to hold sexy and safe space for you as well. So I think it's one of those things, like, how long is a piece of string? How do you really know? But it's about going into these kinds of things with as much self-knowledge and, knowing that you deserve to have your needs met, and knowing that you're allowed to be in situations where you feel really fulfilled and really good about yourself. Like, that's how you have to lead into these with.
I'm old-fashioned. Someone has to take me on a date first.
That's fair.
But a real date.
Yeah.
Like an
What's a
actual
real date?
As in, like, if I meet you on a night out, no, for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You
get my number and you ask.
Yeah, you want to have, like, a vibe check first, but that's the thing. Someone has to pass the vibe check before you want to necessarily
but how
get into it.
like you said, how am I meant to know about the green flags if I haven't even sat down and spoke to you? Like, really?
Especially if the chat is like, bang now, and you're like, maybe.
Yeah.
But also for context, like, I was in a relationship for like 11 years. And
wow.
Yeah, lol. Look at me now. Talking about how to have great sex in an event in front of 100 people. But it meant that I did all of this discovering, like, relatively late in my life. So I became single when I was, like, 28. And so it meant that, like, I had all this bank of knowledge of how to navigate these things. And I think I was really lucky, because I'd almost had, like, not 10 years of practice, but, like, I was able to build a really good knowledge of, like, what I wanted. But then going into the wild world of dating, it threw so many curveballs for me. And I was like, I've got to do lots more learning way, way quicker. So I did the whole, like, oh yeah, let's bang and go. And I was like, do I love, I mean, some of this I really do love, because it allowed me to, like, explore my kinks in a way that I wasn't able to before. But in other ways, it was also like, do I actually like this person?
Yeah.
So maybe make sure you like them is one of the answers to that question.
That's it for me.
Controversial, I know, wild.
Next one for the audience. Have you ever been worried about your sexual performance? Oh, we've got some backers here.
70% said yes, 30% said no.
I would love to see the gender disparity between this as well. I'm surprised by how many people are not worried.
I did think it was going to be a majority of people. I think
Absolutely.
most people have had a bit of a wobble, even if you're like 16.
Oh, definitely. Because for whatever reason, it's probably because a lot of us learned sex ed from porn.
Yeah.
We're expected to be fantastic at everything immediately. We want to be able to give glut glut 3000 as well as be top pussy eaters, as well as being able to throw it back like a pro before, I don't know, you're like 18. Mad.
Yeah.
But it means that when we put that kind of performance on such a high pedestal, we're failing ourselves because it's just another way of beating yourself up, right? It's like, you know, we can beat up ourselves about like how we look and like the way we are, whatever. But I think sexual performance is a huge thing that we can really beat ourselves up about. And the best way you can improve your sexual performance is communication. Like, we're not copy and paste, right? We're not copy and paste people in this room. Yeah, each of us will have like different kinks, different vibes, different needs of communication, different needs in all kinds of scenarios, right? And if you're just kind of using the thing you did on the last person on the next person, you're not actually tuning into their wants and their needs. Listen to their bodily cues. How is their breath quickening? How are they moaning at you? You know, these are all these like really sexy, turny-on-y cues, right? That actually give you great insights into what is working and what isn't. Because, as I said, you can't copy and paste your technique. You got to tailor it to the person. We're all individual, sexy little snowflakes and deserve to be treated as such, you know? Yeah.
Fourth question. How often do you use sexual wellness products, e.g. sex toys, lubricants, etc.? 40% said weekly, 30% said monthly, 20% said never, and 10% said annually.
Never! In 2024, there are nevers. That's so interesting.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting where there's 12 people that never use sex toys or lube, which you said in 2024, I find that crazy.
Especially when it feels like so much of wellness at the moment is also being tied to like sexual wellness. And there's been, it feels like, especially like post-COVID lockdown-y vibes, there's been a big push for people to like explore their sexuality more, whether that is through toys, through lube, through sex parties, through whatever. So at this point, I think it's really intriguing to see that people kind of either aren't interested or, you know, maybe there's a certain taboo around it. Like, I know there's a huge taboo with using lube. I think especially for people who have vaginas, there is a huge taboo about like, oh, I shouldn't need to use lube because I should be wet enough. No, lube is lit. Lube is amazing. Like, I don't know if anyone has ever tried to use a penetrative sex toy without lube. Like, don't do that. Using lube is so pleasurable, and I think just making it part of like the sexy foreplay conversation makes for a really, really fun time as well. And also, I think there's an issue sometimes where people think that sex toys or lube or anything like that is like their competition. But no, sex toys and lube are your teammates. You want to be all on the same team and have a very fun, sexy, orgasmic party together. Like, don't think of them as your competition. Like, involve them, but take it step by step, right? Like, you don't have to go straight into the deep end and go for like the biggest butt plug you can find. Like, unless that's your thing, live your truth. Like, I don't like to yuck anyone's yum, innit? But what is really key is that, again, it kind of ties back to this self-knowledge thing, right? It's like, what am I comfortable with? What's something I want to explore? What's something that would feel really sexy to me that maybe I haven't tried yet?
Yeah.
And toys and lube are such a great access point into doing that.
So I looked up stats before this of how many people or what percentage of people have like a sex toy or sex wellness product in the UK. Does anyone want to guess what the percentage of the UK was? 100%. Someone got it, 50%. And then if you do have like a sex toy or wellness product, how many on average do you have? I haven't heard it yet. 4? 4. You said 1, didn't you? But yeah, 4, which I thought was really interesting.
No, well, me and sex toys are like Pringles. Like, now I've popped, I cannot stop.
Yeah.
Please, I just want to keep adding to my collection. Like,
I
just
think
when
that's
you
the
think
thing.
you found the thing, there's another thing.
There's another womanizer.
And it vibrates in a whole like, ooh, womanizer.
You got one of those?
I sure do.
I also do have a lot of lube at home, and I think it's a really important thing. And
Lube
get a
is
nice
it?
one that you like.
Yeah, and I think especially like you want to look into the ingredients as well. Like, I'm always somebody who is much more like natural ingredient focused.
Yeah.
Also be conscious that some, I think it's silicone based most lubes can't be used with condoms.
Yeah.
So making sure that it's water-based as well is a really good, stay informed.
Yeah, we don't want to erode the condoms. Next one for the audience.
I like this question.
Do you have a kink or fetish you haven't explored
Yes,
yet?
immediately, yes.
Someone explore it.
No,
Ooh, it's very split. Ooh.
60% said no and 40% said yes.
Okay, how can you explore kinks and fetishes?
I don't know why this particular question, I don't know whether it's because it's a short question. It feels like it's like yelling at me on the screen.
Yeah, it's quite
how
big.
can I explore? No, sorry. So exploring kinks and fetishes, I think a really good way of doing that is kind of like talking to your friends. Honestly, like I think again, like coming out of my long relationship, there were things that I thought I knew I was into, but being in like open spaces with my friends and like having open conversation and being like, especially without shame, I think that is the most important thing, because I think especially when we talk about sex, kinks, fetishes, anything like that, there is an overarching societal shame that all of us are trying to unlearn or need to unlearn, and know that like as long as you're not hurting anyone, have a fabulous time and enjoy it. So explore it knowing your own kind of body levels, like, so, you know, especially if you're exploring something that does involve pain, it's really important to know kind of what your limits are there, because that could get dangerous. And again, kind of tying back to our earlier question, making sure you're doing it with somebody who wants to keep you safe and sexy is important. And yeah, just being curious, communicating with your sexual partner or with your friends and being like, this is something that sounds cool. Like, I did this recently with a friend of mine, and she was like, I had this really dirty dream the other day. And I was like, tell me everything. And it turned out that we had a really similar kink. And it was like, wow, like, that's really exciting, because it means that we now have less shame because we know someone else experiences it. And, you know, there's that quote that I'm going to fuck up now, which is, like, shame proliferates in silence, you know, like it perpetuates in silence. So if you don't have these conversations, you could be sitting there being like, I really want someone to pee on me, but no one wants to. But you find that person and they're like, hell yeah, I'd love to pee on you. Lit. It's all about opening up. There is an element of vulnerability in it, like, don't get me wrong, like, and it takes practice to feel more confident in asking for what you want. But if you want to feel more present in the bedroom, if you want to have more exciting experiences, explore these kinds of things, so much of it comes down to communication and confidence.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Oh, thanks.
Also, we'll shout out the app Field. Who's on Field?
Hey.
Not many. That's surprising. I feel like everyone's getting on it now, but
yeah, which is,
if you have any
so
real
annoyed.
kinks, like, that's the app for you.
Yeah.
And you can also just put, like, I'm learning the ropes, so people can like show you different things.
And the fun thing about learning the ropes is some people take that literally and are like, oh, do you want to be my shibari bunny? And I'm like, please, for the love of God, make me your shibari bunny. But that hasn't happened yet. But this is the thing, right? Is that Field has such a good platform and open space for talking about these things in a non-judgmental way. Like, I had one guy essentially super swipe on me, and his bio just said, I'm looking for a hot woman to shit on me. And I was like, whoa. Like, honestly, like, buddy, again, I'm not gonna yuck your yum, innit? Like, you're not hurting anyone, you're living your best life, but that's not gonna be me. Yeah. Unless you pay me, then it's completely different. You have to pay me a lot, but this is what I mean.
Would, yeah.
Yeah.
Another, especially as this is a podcast, another really good podcast is Come Curious with Florence and Reed. They are so good. And Reed has a brilliant fetish. Hers is a tickle fetish. Which I didn't know was a thing. And I love watching her content of their tickle parties. Like, they're so interesting for me.
No, it's fascinating. You kind of feel like, I think especially because there are so many niche kinks and there are so many, like, I don't know if anyone was on TikTok during the time that everyone decided they wanted to fuck Ghostface from Scream. Like, that was it? No? How did I get on that side of TikTok? How embarrassing. But this is what I mean. Like, people find their kinky communities by looking for it, by communicating, by doing that brave thing and going, there's this thing, by the way. Yeah. And that can be the start of, like, a really beautiful sexual journey.
Okay, last one. Have you ever been to a sex party?
Tee-hee.
Tee-hee.
Half of the audience said no and they don't want to. 45% of the audience said no, but they do want to. And a couple people said yes more than once and yes just once.
Juicy. Yes, juicy.
I feel like slowly, as people get more confidence, they're like,
maybe I will.
I'm not surprised I got this question then, because I think we only had 5 yeses in the room. So do you know of any sex parties in London which are welcoming, so good for beginners? And we had a lot that said no, but I want to. So it makes sense.
I think most sex parties, you just have to know that it's a very wild thing to go into. So like manage your expectations, right? So, but I think what is in that is that I'd say most sex parties are great for beginners, because it's not that the sex party is putting the agenda on you. You decide what you want out of the experience, right? Like, so the first time I went, I was like, oh, I'm just going to like vibe with my friends. And then I did not vibe with my friends. To put it lightly. And then from there, and then I went to a couple more, and I was like, okay, I'm getting more of a vibe check now. I understand like what the attendees are like, kind of what the expectations are, what my own expectations are. Because I think also if you go into the space being like, I'm going to be an absolute fuck demon, like, and your expectations kind of end up not being met, you can come away from it being like, oh, I didn't have the experience I want. So kind of go with an open mind and go with your own kind of wants and needs in mind. But I recommend Club Verboten, which is super great. Okay. I think a lot of people have discovered that's like the great one to go into. Torture Garden as well. I haven't been to Torture Garden yet, but I've heard good
mixed things about that one.
I have also heard mixed things. That's why I went to Club Verboten first. Club Verboten first? There we go.
Where is that one?
So the locations change. You usually get told kind of before the event where it's going to be. There's also Joyride, which is if you're more LGBTQ. That's a great space. I mean, not to say that the other spaces aren't LGBTQ friendly, but spaces like Quench and Joyride really center folks from marginalized backgrounds and who are LGBTQ. So if that's something that's really important to you, make sure you go. But yeah, no, I think any party is good for a beginner. It's just about making sure what your intentions are with the space and what you're looking for out of the space. So if also, like, music-wise, if you're really into techno, if you like having sex to techno, go to Club Verboten. It turns out I don't like having sex to techno. The beat is totally off. I'm more of like a slow jam, like Summer Walker kind of girly. If you know, you know. But that's also something to take into account as well, right? Like, is this actually, like, would I be going to this if I couldn't have sex here? Kind of, you know, because if you also want to like boogie down, you can boogie down. You don't actually have to have sex if you don't want to. So yeah, just go at it with an open mind and see what happens. Stay curious.
Love it. Okay. Thank you so much, Kitty.
Oh, a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed this spicy topic. Let me know if you have any feedback, and I'll be back next week with the usual format with a single man of London post-bank holiday. Have a great week, guys, and I'll see you next Tuesday. Bye.